You know what used to bother me every single spring? I'd step outside with my cup of coffee, look over the fence, and there it was again. My neighbor's flower beds glowing like a magazine cover, while mine looked fine, but never fabulous. I bought the premium potting mix, I followed the directions on the fertilizer bag, I watered more, I babied those plants like they were my grandkids, and still her roses were richer, her petunias were fuller, and even her hanging baskets looked like they were on steroids. For the longest time I thought, well, maybe she just has a greener thumb than I do. Then one day, while we were both outside deadheading, I finally asked her, "Okay, what's your secret? What are you using that I'm not?" She just smiled, walked into her garage, and came back holding a plain, no-frills bag of Epsom salt. Not a fancy bloom booster, not a $30 specialty tonic, just the same Epsom salt people soak their tired feet in. She said, "This is it, magnesium sulfate. Costs just a few bucks at the drugstore. I've been using it on my flowers for years." At first, I honestly thought she was joking. Epsom salt? The stuff in the bathroom cabinet? But I tried it, very skeptically, I'll admit, and by the third week, I couldn't deny what I was seeing. The leaves were a richer green, the flower buds came on stronger, and the colors had more depth, like someone had turned up the saturation on my whole garden. That's when I started digging into the why behind this little white crystal, and what I found out made me completely rethink how I feed my plants. Now, before I walk you through exactly how to use it step by step, let's clear up what Epsom salt actually is. It's not table salt. It's a naturally occurring mineral called magnesium sulfate, two things plants quietly depend on. Magnesium is at the very center of every chlorophyll molecule, the green pigment that lets your plants capture sunlight and turn it into energy. No magnesium, no chlorophyll. No chlorophyll, no real energy for growth, flowering, or fruiting. Plant scientists looking at lots of fertilizer trials have seen the same pattern over and over. When soils are low in magnesium, just a small boost can increase growth, deepen leaf color, and in many cases improve yield and flower performance. The sulfate part, sulfur combined with oxygen, helps your plants take up nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus more efficiently, almost like a little helper that makes whatever fertilizer you already use work better. So you're not replacing your regular fertilizer, you're giving it a sidekick. And here's where it really matters for flower lovers. When plants are short on magnesium, they often show it not just in their leaves, but in their blooms. They may produce fewer buds, the flowers may open smaller, and the colors can look washed out instead of vivid. The leaves might turn a pale, tired green with yellowing between the veins, while the veins stay darker. That's a classic sign of magnesium deficiency in many ornamentals and even houseplants. When you correct that deficiency, the plant can finally run its engine properly. More efficient photosynthesis means more energy, and more energy means it can invest in buds, blossoms, and fruit instead of just surviving. Now, a quick but important note. This little trick works best in places where the soil actually needs magnesium. Many gardeners, especially in sandy soils, older garden beds that have been heavily watered, or acid soils, do see a benefit. If your soil already has plenty of magnesium, you might not see a huge change, and piling on more isn't helpful. So think of Epsom salt as a smart supplement, not magic dust. And if you ever have the chance to get a basic soil test from your local extension office or garden center, you'll know for sure what your soil is missing. By the way, if you like learning simple, science-backed ways to get better results with less work, take a second right now to hit the subscribe button and tap that like button so more gardeners can find this video. Then come right back because the how-to is where it gets really fun.
So, how exactly do you use this $3 garden upgrade without guessing or overdoing it? Let's start with the simplest, most beginner-friendly method, the 1 tablespoon per gallon root drench. Step 1. Measure 1 tablespoon of plain, unscented Epsom salt. No added fragrances, no bath oils, no fancy colors, just the basic magnesium sulfate crystals you can grab at any drugstore, grocery store, or big box retailer. Step 2. Dissolve that tablespoon in 1 gallon of warm water. Warm, not hot. It just dissolves faster that way. Stir until the water goes clear and there are no granules left at the bottom. Step 3. Water your plants with this solution at the base, right on the soil around the root zone. Don't dump it right on the stem. Think of making a ring around the plant where the feeder roots actually are. For most flowering plants and fruiting vegetables that tend to love magnesium, like roses, tomatoes, peppers, many annual flowers, and certain shrubs, doing this once every 2 weeks during active growth is plenty. More is not better here. In fact, more can create new problems, which I'll explain a bit later. Also, never pour this solution onto bone-dry soil. Give your plants a light watering first with plain water so the soil is evenly moist, then apply the Epsom salt mix. Roots need moisture to carry minerals into the plant, and on dry soil, the solution can sit near the surface instead of moving down where it's needed. Now, if you really want to get in early with your tomatoes and peppers, there's a trick many seasoned growers quietly swear by. When you plant your seedlings in the ground or in large containers, mix about 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt into the planting hole with the native soil or potting mix before setting the plant in. Don't let the dry crystals sit in a little pile touching the tender roots. Blend it through the soil around the hole so it's spread out. Then plant as usual and water well. This gives your young plants a gentle magnesium boost right where they need it, helping them build stronger root systems and thicker, sturdier stems from the start. Over the season, you can continue with the every 2 weeks watering if your plants seem to respond well. So, which plants tend to show the biggest improvement? Roses are near the top of the list. They're famously hungry for magnesium, and many rose growers notice more abundant blooms, deeper colors, and tougher petals when they supply a little extra. Tomatoes and peppers, both in the nightshade family, often respond nicely, especially in soils that are even slightly deficient. You may notice fewer issues with pale leaves and a general perk-up in vigor. Acid-loving shrubs like azaleas, rhododendrons, and camellias can also benefit because acidic soil tends to lose magnesium more easily through leaching. A gentle Epsom salt drench during their growing season can help prevent that washed-out look. And then there are houseplants. If you have older potted plants with leaves that are yellowing between the veins, while the veins stay greener, particularly on the lower leaves, and you know you're not overwatering, a small Epsom salt treatment once a month in the growing season can sometimes turn things around. But remember, indoor plants are in a confined space, so use a weaker solution, about half a tablespoon per gallon, and go slowly. On the other hand, some plants usually don't need extra magnesium at all, especially leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, or arugula, and legumes like beans and peas. They're generally satisfied if your base soil and fertilizer are balanced, so don't feel like you have to treat every plant in sight. If you're enjoying how practical and step-by-step this is so far, do me a favor. Pause for just a second, hit that like button, and share this video with a gardening friend who's always chasing better blooms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a perfect time. This channel is all about easy, low-strain garden hacks that save your back and your budget.
Now let's talk about timing and what you can realistically expect over the next month once you start using Epsom salt the right way, because knowing the timeline keeps you from giving up too early or overdoing it out of impatience. In the first 7 to 10 days after your initial application, most of the changes will be subtle but real. The very newest leaves may start to emerge with a richer, more even green. If your plants were slightly magnesium-starved, that pale, tired tone begins to fade in new growth. Older leaves that were already yellowed between the veins usually don't magically turn solid green again. Nutrient deficiency often leaves a scar on older foliage, but what you're really watching for is how the fresh leaves look. Around days 14 to 18, especially if you give a second application at the 2-week mark, many gardeners notice the plants wake up a bit. You might see stronger side shoots forming, leaf canopy filling in, and for flowering plants, more buds starting to appear. It's like the plant finally has the energy budget to do something other than just maintain itself. On established roses, that can mean more canes pushing out flower clusters. On petunias or other annuals, it can mean a noticeable jump in the number of little buds waiting to open. Somewhere around the 3-week point, say day 20 to 24, is when the real wow factor often kicks in, especially if your soil was truly short on magnesium to begin with. Those buds that formed earlier start to open, and you may see that your reds look richer, your purples more saturated, and your whites cleaner and crisper instead of dingy. Petals can feel a bit thicker and more substantial, and the overall plant just looks healthier and better put together. By about day 30, assuming you've stayed consistent but not excessive, you're looking at peak performance for many flowering plants, a fuller flush of blooms, deeper coloring, and in many cases, a plant that just looks content instead of stressed. That's usually when neighbors or visitors begin asking, "What are you doing differently this year?" Now, if you're the kind of gardener who likes to see results a little faster, there's another method you can layer on: foliar feeding. Plants can absorb nutrients not only through their roots, but also directly through their leaves in small amounts. For this, you'll want a milder solution, about 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt in 2 gallons of water. Mix well, pour it into a clean spray bottle or garden sprayer, and lightly mist the leaves on both the top and underside. Always do this in the early morning or late afternoon when the sun is gentle. Spraying in the midday heat can lead to leaf burn, especially if the droplets act like little lenses. With foliar feeding, magnesium can move into the plant a bit more quickly, so some gardeners notice improvements in leaf color a few days sooner than with soil drenching alone. You don't need to do both methods constantly. Pick what fits your routine. Maybe a root drench one week and a light foliar mist the next. Just remember, keep it light and regular, don't soak the plant to dripping, and always stop if you see any sign of stress. Quickly, before we talk about the big mistakes to avoid, if this kind of gentle, low-effort approach to getting more from your garden is your style, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. That way you don't miss the next video where we'll dive into other inexpensive, hidden-in-plain-sight helpers for your flowers and veggies. And if you've already tried Epsom salt before, good or bad, drop a comment and tell me your experience. Other gardeners can learn a lot from real-world stories.
Let's move on to the part that can make or break this whole thing. The 3 big mistakes that cause people to swear off Epsom salt and say it didn't work, or even it made things worse. Mistake number 1 is the most common, assuming that if a little is good, a lot must be amazing. It's so tempting. If 1 tablespoon in a gallon makes your plants perk up, why not 3? The problem is that nutrients in plants behave like a seesaw. Too much of one can interfere with the uptake of others. In this case, overloading the soil with magnesium can compete with calcium absorption. Plants still need calcium for strong cell walls, healthy root tips, and proper fruit development. When they can't get enough, you may see familiar problems like blossom end rot on tomatoes and peppers, that ugly, dark, sunken spot at the bottom of the fruit, or blossom drop and poor fruit set. People sometimes blame too much Epsom salt directly for blossom end rot, when technically the issue is the imbalance it can create if you go overboard. That's why sticking to about 1 tablespoon per gallon every 2 weeks for magnesium-hungry plants is a smart upper limit unless a professional soil test and expert guidance suggest otherwise. More is not better here. Consistency and moderation win. Mistake number 2 is pouring Epsom salt solution onto very dry soil or plants that are already stressed from drought. When soil is parched, roots are not in a good position to absorb minerals efficiently. On top of that, any salts added to dry soil can create a stronger solution right around the roots, which can actually pull water out of the root cells instead of helping them. Always water your plants lightly with plain water first, let that soak in so the soil is nicely moist, then follow up with your diluted Epsom salt solution. Think of it like giving your plants a drink before offering them a supplement. Mistake number 3 is using Epsom salt as a cure-all for every plant problem under the sun. Yellowing leaves? Epsom salt. Poor growth? Epsom salt. Bugs? Epsom salt. Someone online said it works, so why not? The truth is, yellow leaves can mean all sorts of things: overwatering, underwatering, nitrogen deficiency, root damage, even disease. If magnesium isn't the issue, adding more won't fix the real problem. And like we said earlier, not every crop even benefits from extra magnesium in the first place.
Leafy greens, many herbs, and legumes are usually fine with a balanced fertilizer regime. So before you reach for that bag, take a moment to really look at your plant. Is the yellowing between the veins while the veins stay green, especially on older leaves? Are other nutrients being supplied? Are you watering correctly? Epsom salt is a great tool when used for the right reason, but it's not a magic wand. One more subtle mistake: treating containers exactly like in-ground beds. In pots and planters, salts build up more quickly because there's less soil volume and drainage is more limited. If you're using Epsom salt on container plants, go weaker and less often, maybe half a tablespoon per gallon once a month, and now and then give the pot a good deep watering to flush out excess salts. Taking a minute to remember these points can be the difference between a garden that quietly thrives and one that struggles. If this is giving you those aha moments and saving you from potential headaches, let me ask you a favor. Tap that like button to let the algorithm know gardeners want solid, no-nonsense advice, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next tip that could save you time, money, and sore knees.
Now, for those of you who like to squeeze every bit of value out of a simple product, let's talk about a few bonus ways some gardeners use Epsom salt in the yard and garden, and where you might want to experiment carefully. First, lawns. If your grass looks a bit dull and yellowish, even after proper watering and balanced fertilizer, and especially if a soil test shows low magnesium, some folks lightly apply Epsom salt to green things up. A common experimental rate people use is around 1 to 2 pounds of Epsom salt per 1,000 square feet, spread as evenly as possible with a fertilizer spreader, followed by a thorough watering to wash it into the soil. If you try this, start on a small section of lawn rather than the whole yard. Watch it for 2 or 3 weeks. If the color improves without any patchiness or stress, you'll know your soil likely appreciated the magnesium boost. If nothing changes, don't keep piling it on. Your lawn may not need it. Second, transplant recovery. When you move a plant from a pot into the ground or repot a long-term container resident, the roots inevitably get disturbed. Some gardeners like to give a gentle Epsom salt drench right after transplanting to support root function during that stressful period. For this, go with a mild solution, about 1 tablespoon in 2 gallons of water, and water the plant in thoroughly after it's in its new home. This doesn't replace normal watering, it's just a small assist to help the plant reestablish. Third, slugs and snails. You may have heard that sprinkling dry Epsom salt around plants can deter these slimy leaf chewers because they don't enjoy crawling over the rough crystals, and the saltiness can be unpleasant for them. Some gardeners swear by it, others see mixed results. If you're battling slugs and want to avoid traditional pesticides, you can try a light ring of dry Epsom salt a few inches away from the plant stem, being careful not to create a thick, salty crust that could affect your soil over time. Think of this as one tool in a toolbox that should also include things like hand picking at dusk, copper tape in containers, or simple traps. And always remember, any salt, including magnesium sulfate, can build up if you go heavy and often, so use the dry sprinkle method sparingly and in rotation with other tactics. Finally, indoor and patio containers that you really want to keep in bloom all season, things like geraniums, calibrachoa, or mixed annual planters. Once a month during active growth, a weak Epsom salt solution can help maintain that rich green foliage that acts like the engine behind continuous flowering, especially if the potting mix you're using is a bit low in magnesium. Pair it with a balanced fertilizer that supplies nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and trace elements, and you've got a simple, affordable nutrition plan without needing a shelf full of specialty bottles. As we wrap this up, let's bring it back to the big picture. A small, inexpensive bag of plain Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, can, when your soil needs it, help your plants build greener leaves, stronger stems, and in many cases, more abundant, richer-colored flowers and fruits. The key is not treating it like a miracle, but like a smart, targeted supplement. About 1 tablespoon dissolved in a gallon of water applied to moist soil around magnesium-loving plants every 2 weeks during active growth, or even milder and less often for containers and houseplants. Expect the first signs of change in the new growth after a week or so, a more obvious shift in energy and budding around weeks 2 and 3, and a real wow moment in bloom and overall vigor by around 30 days if magnesium truly was a limiting factor in your garden. Avoid the big 3 mistakes of overdoing the dose, dumping it onto dry soil, or assuming it will fix every problem, and you put yourself in the best position to see the upside without the downside. And maybe, just maybe, a few weeks from now, you'll be the neighbor whose flowers make everyone else peek over the fence and wonder what secret you've discovered. When they ask, you can either smile and tell them it's just a little magnesium sulfate, or keep it your quiet gardening hack. Totally your call. If you found this helpful, let me know by hitting that like button. Subscribe for more simple, low-strain gardening tips, and drop a comment telling me which plant you're going to try this on first, your roses, your tomatoes, your azaleas, or something else entirely. I read your comments, and they help me decide what to share with you next. Happy gardening, friends!